with the SAP IP Business Talks. Today, my guest is Henry Wang. That is the reason why we are at this strange time at 11 o'clock around noon here in Central Europe. The reason is that Henry is in Hong Kong, and so we wanted to have him awake and not forcing him to talk with us in the middle of the night. That's the reason. And today we have also an accredited guest on LinkedIn with us. It's Christian Sliss. I'm very happy. Christian is also he is committee chair at I3PM and for SDG and ESG. And this is the topic today. I want to talk with Henry about his lecturing in this course, which you see in the background. He is lecturing in our university diploma, and he has there a very interesting chapter. It is about the advantages of sustainable development for business, part 2, and it is our university certificate together with the EPO about the ESG and the role of IP in ESG and SDG. And Henry is there giving there a lecture about the question of risk assessments and also about the relationships between customers and employees. And he's also a lecturer about IP in corporate sustainability. So now a warm welcome to you, Henry. Thank you very much for joining us today here in our SAP IP Business Talks. Explain us a little bit who you are, what is your background, and how did you came into that field of IP in this very, very fascinating relation to ESG and SDG.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to join your international podcast today. I'm very happy to be here. I'm Henry Wang. I'm an international executive, author, and advisor. I have basically been in the senior business position worldwide. I was director for Shell in China. And then after that, I was invited to advise the Saudi prince and be a director of one of the largest company in the Middle East. Now I have my own company, and we're advising leading companies and universities around the world. I'm very happy to be invited to lecture at the very interesting course at the University of Strasbourg by yourselves. So I'm very, very happy to be working with you on this. I believe that intellectual property, innovation are very closely linked to sustainable development, sustainability, SDG, and ESG. And working together, these can be tremendous force for good to mitigate climate change around the world and to improve the life of people around the world. So I'm very happy to be here and to discuss various aspects of that with you today.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I would like to start to talk with you about this chapter, this lecture, which you are giving in our new EPO SAP University Diploma about IP management. So it is about ESG is the certificate, and you especially talking there about these interaction between IP and risks and the question how that is interrelated. So what would you say? So you come from a business consulting perspective. You have also this enormous background from the industry. So how would you say, how can businesses profit? How can they benefit from sustainable initiatives?
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a very important question. And in my discussion with CEOs and leading companies around the world, I discovered that they're focused by CEOs and senior management on the sustainability, climate change, and are now really, really growing. I mean, a good example is the international survey. Recent international survey shows that 97% of the CEO around the world are now saying that climate change and sustainability are their top two uh, management focus in their board and in their company. And a lot of them, of course, have also signed the Paris Agreement and are now working extremely hard to transform themselves into sustainable companies and developing their net zero plans and carbon neutrality plans so that they can meet the targets that they have committed themselves to their shareholders, to the public, to the government. So these are actually real life situations that senior managements in all companies around the world are facing. And in addition, of course, a lot of governments are now agreeing of the importance of climate change. I'm very honored to be invited by the G20 presidency of different companies to join the G20 B20 task force to advise the G20 leaders and the B20 CEOs. And we work together with international experts and CEOs around the world to prepare our policy paper, which the G20 presidency will submit on our behalf to the G20 leader. A very good example is that the G20 presidency of Indonesia invited me to join their climate, energy, and sustainability task force in 2022. And we worked together for about 10 months from January to October in 2022. And then the president of Indonesia then presented our policy paper to the G20 leaders in their summit, which he hosted in Bali. And that was a very, very important summit because they talked about sustainability, they talk about clean energy and how important international cooperations are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole topic of sustainability is a global issue. It is at least international, and no country, no region can solve these problems alone. And I mean that is the that shows the complexity of that thing. So Christian has a very interesting question, and he said that he asked the question whether there are certain financial or non-financial indicators to confirm that ESG and SDG and innovation are correlated, so to speak. Do you know something like that?
Yeah, this is actually important. Thanks, Christian. And Christian and I work very closely together in the SDG ESG committee of I3PM. This is a very important committee, and I'm very happy that Christian invited me to join the committee together with other experts around the world. And the question of finance is actually of rising importance. A good example is that I've been the president-elect of Indonesia has invited me to give a series of lecture to his new team and his new cabinet that are coming into going to take their position soon. But before they take their position, the president-elect thought it would be a good idea to that he runs a series of strategic leadership cohorts organized in the Indonesia Defense University. And I'm lucky and very honored to be invited to lecture to them about clean energy and green finance. And really, green finance is a tremendous area, and it is an area which is also very much interlinked with innovation and IP. Yeah. I mean, just to give you an example, at this moment, about $5 to $6 trillion are being invested in green impact investment at this stage in time. But the experts around the world have now actually published their forecast, and this is a consensus forecast by top economists and investment bankers around the world. And they forecast this figure will grow by 5 to 7 times by 2030. I mean, this is amazing. Wow. Now we are 2024, so in 6 years' time, this is going to grow to about $30 trillion. I mean, wow. That's a huge amount of money that is going to go into innovation, green, particularly in the green finance area, and it will create a huge amount of opportunity for IP, IPR, and a lot of questions also about what is the right IP strategy, and also what is the right balance between IPR and open source, particularly for important global problems like climate mitigation.
Yeah, that is something which you mentioned in a very interesting article, a post which you wrote in the IP Business Academy blog, and which then later on I published also in the newsletter IP Management Pulse. So for the ones who don't know that, I give you the link later on in the comments. Can you summarize a little bit these linkage between IP innovation and the ESG or SDG goals?
Yeah, actually, thank you very much for inviting me to prepare the blog and then publishing it in the newsletter. And congratulations on the popularity of your newsletter around the world. I remember when we first talked about the newsletter, it was only sort of end of last year, beginning. And now I'm very glad to hear from you. There is 300,000 follower to 500,000 follower globally. So that's tremendous work. I really take my hat off and full compliment to you and your team for
exactly. It's not just me, Henry. We have these unbelievable co-authors like you and many more, and they have tens of thousands of followers. And this is absolutely brilliant. These reach on impressions, which the messages have from the newsletter. Yeah, this is basically the work from the co-authors that and you are one of them, and explaining again and again this, for example, in your case, this linkage and the importance to understand the role of IP in that game. So can you summarize a little bit what you wrote there?
Yeah, very important. The really key one sentence summary is that innovation and IP are really critical to solving the world's climate problem. And let me give you a very good example of that. Yeah. A very good example of that is that 10 years ago, when I talk about clean energy and renewable to CEOs and governments around the world, everybody said, yes, it's very interesting, but it's so expensive. We can't afford it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Today, 10 years later, 2024, at this stage in time, and I'm very happy to report to you and share with you all that the innovation that has been made has led to, say, 70% reduction in the cost of solar PV
Wow.
electricity. I mean,
Wow.
that's huge. That has made solar PV power generation to be cost competitive to power generation by fossil fuel from oil and gas.
Absolutely.
That is actually a real real watermark,
Yeah.
because from now on there is no cost argument to on power on brown electricity generation based on the fossil and coal and oil and gas,
Yeah.
because with solar and with other renewable you are just as competitive. And
Yeah.
this is not my figure, this is the figure that is published by the International Renewable Energy Association after a survey, a global survey. So these are very kosher figures, and these are facts of life at this moment in time. And,
Yeah.
we have to thank the international cooperation and the innovation in many universities and many companies in developing new approaches to solar power generation, to wind turbines, to achieve this sort of massive amount of technical advance and innovation and cost reduction.
Yeah, I think that is a brilliant example to show that these cost arguments don't fit anymore in the discussion, and they lead to nowhere. So when we have this innovation, when we have the stimulus and the incentivizing, the incentivation from IP to invest in innovation, we will see that technologies, and with the technologies, for example, a cost decretion. Christian has another aspect which I think it's quite interesting. Do you have an example where we see that companies are courage to stop unsustainable activities, and they are encouraged to create a more sustainable business approach? Do you have something like that?
Yes, there are many. Thanks for this good question. There are actually many examples that can be of leading companies. I've written about these in my book on the roadmap to sustainable business and net zero carbon
Wow.
emission. But let me share with you some leading examples in this. One very good example is Patagonia. This is recognized to be one of
Absolutely.
the leading sustainable clothing companies. And really it has adopted sustainability as its core corporate mission, and included every aspect of sustainability, ESG, SDG in its business model.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that is a very good example. Even the financial solution which the owner and founder now created, so that he proved, so to speak, that this is not a greenwashing, just a branding activity, that he's really committed to circularity and sustainability. Yes, that's a wonderful example, and we should promote your book a little bit. I'm happy to write about it and to promote it. I even didn't know that you wrote that book, but I'm absolutely sure that we can help you to spread the message from the book, right? So another very interesting example from Benjamin is to what extent is open innovation a driver of progress in realizing SDG? Because typically IP and open innovation is sometimes seen as standing in a certain conflict. Sometimes it is a facilitator of open innovation. And how do you think that open innovation is a way into improving to go faster into the direction of fulfilling the SDGs?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Benjamin. That's a very important question. I work very closely with Benjamin in Hong Kong. He's the director for libraries for the Chinese University of Hong Kong, which is one of the leading universities in Hong Kong and actually also globally. And he's doing a lot of very, very interesting work on the open library, open sourcing, open book, together with universities in Hong Kong and also in China and in Asia. This is actually a huge question that is being debated at this moment in time. And innovation, particularly in clean energy area, really are very closely linked with SDG, because innovation, for example, a good example is innovation in clean energy generated from renewable directly contribute to SDG 13, which is climate action. But at the same time, it is also contributing to SDG 7, which is about clean and affordable energy for population around the world. I mean, we are at this moment having this international podcast with advanced technology, with electricity, very stable Wi-Fi. But just imagine, out of the 9 billion people around the world at this moment in time, 1 billion, and this is official UN figures, that still have no access to reliable electricity supply. 1 billion people.
Absolutely.
And in fact, this question I was also discussing with the new team of the president-elect of Indonesia when I gave my last lecture to them a few weeks ago. I mean, Indonesia is really tackling this problem. It has a geography which is consisting of 17,000 islands across the whole country. So it is very difficult. They aspire to provide electricity for all, but at this moment, there are geological and other physical barriers because of the 17 different islands that will present difficulties for them to extend their grid, the national grid, in the traditional way.
Yeah.
In the traditional way, you will have to build pylons, you will have to extend grid, you will have to, these are all very expensive, lay undersea cables between the island and things like that. These are multi-billion type investments. However, with innovations now that are going on in solar, in renewable energy, in power distribution system, which are really very advanced digital power management system, including AI features, and then with power storage systems, you can actually allow to provide clean, stable electricity to remote villages very easily. And these are being done in Africa, in India, in other remote countries at this stage in time. So the good news actually at this stage is that, the innovation that has been done in clean energy are directly contributing to 2 SDGs, SDG 13 on the climate action and SDG 7 on affordable energy. It is improving the life of people is reducing the 1 billion people who have no access to electricity. So these can tremendous force of good around the world.
Absolutely. I have here from Karim Al-Hadi, and I have another very interesting question. So he asked, how can poor countries benefit from such innovation? Should there be some sort of global collaboration to provide a framework or guidelines for them to follow if they can physically support, but also that reflects to what Christian says. He says, to which extent can IP support that kind of collaboration, for example, into the direction of circular economy towards the SDGs? What would you say?
No, thanks for the two very important questions. And I think certainly IP can contribute a lot to international cooperation and circular economy development and improving recycling. Let me give you a few concrete examples. In fact, the point about international cooperation was one of the important proposals, policy proposals, that we made under the leadership of the G20 presidency of Indonesia. In our paper, policy paper to the G20 leaders, we actually propose there should be stronger international cooperations in innovations and clean energy, because at this moment, as you all know, there are rising international sanctions and barriers, tariff barriers, and other areas. I will not go into the details of this, but every day we read about these in the news. So it is very important. I'm very glad to report that the president of Indonesia in the G20 summit, he presented on our behalf the policy paper to the G20 leaders, which proposed greater international cooperation, particularly in innovation, particularly in climate change and clean energy areas.
Yeah,
certainly, innovation and IP can contribute greatly to circular economy, and a lot of companies are, in fact, working on it. A very good example is the example of Unilever. They are developing the bottle-to-bottle technology, which allow the new technology, which they have patented, which allow them to recycle more of their bottling and then to improve the circularity of the whole thing.
Got you. And I think exactly this activity that we need a good understanding of the role of IP for incentivizing innovation, also for licensing schemes. So that was, to my understanding, also what Karim asked, is obviously that we need a reasonable licensing activity that gives technology access where, for example, the sun is. So it doesn't help that we have in regions these photovoltaic technology where we don't have the sun, and that we don't have access to that kind of technologies in areas where we need that. So that is a way. So IP can work here as a way of facilitator to bring the technologies to where it is necessary. And this is something, what I understand, what you're doing at I3PM together with other committee members in this committee for SDG and ESG. So I3PM is the International Institute for Intellectual Property Management. And there is Christian Sliss and Christine Wormsley and Edson Souza and Troy LaMontagne. So we talk here about South America, United States, Toys in the States, Edson is in Brazil, and 2 European. So it's really a global a committee, and also we have extended committee members and from Europe and from Asia. And in this committee, what you're doing there from a practical standpoint, how do you cooperate? How do you try to help? How do you improve the situation there?
Yeah, I'm very happy to be invited to join the committee. And like you say, this is a really international committee around the world. And we all passionately believe in the strong linkages between IP, innovation, ESG, and SDG. So several key areas, and we are also working very closely together with also I3PM committees like the IP strategy committee in this area. So one very exciting thing we discussed in our last committee meeting is really in this area to really truly identify the benefit between IP, ESG, SDG on the IP strategies, and to explore what new IP strategy models can be developed to really improve international cooperation and take the balance between IPR and open sourcing. We are planning to cooperate together with Cambridge University on developing a global survey of IP practitioners to
is
really
that Frank Tietze, Professor Frank Tietze?
That's correct. Together with Frank, yeah, and he was very, very supportive and very enthusiastic. I think we will develop the details, but I think this is a work which we would like to involve you all in this area, together with the participants and practitioners in this work.
Got you, wonderful. And I have here a very interesting question from Chen, and he asked, how can we promote the value of IP with the help of SDG or ESG? So in terms of how can we show that it makes sense for the companies to invest in IP to improve this thinking when we talk about intellectual property in the framework of SDG and ESG?
Yeah, that's a very important question. Thank you. I think in this area, you can certainly develop really good strategies. I'm working with some of the leading companies to really monetize and how do you value innovation, IPR, and are really very, very important questions that company leading management have to ask themselves as they go ahead. And certainly, I think in this area, SDG can be a very useful marker for companies to use, and increasingly actually in our G20 and B20 discussions, you can see more companies are now adopting SDG in addition to ESG reporting, which they have to do as a mandatory requirement to their governments. I mean, they are now, for example, you can, in the IP, now in certain IP, if you have a certain IP or innovation on the less, for example, say in solar area or wind turbine area, then you can really clearly say that this is contributing to SDG 13, which is climate action, and SDG 7, which is affordable clean electricity for a different part of the world. And it can also contribute to SDG 13.2, which is deals with governments having to incorporate clean innovation and clean energy innovation in their national policies, how to encourage these in their innovation hubs, and also in how to develop their PPP models, or how do you seed the governments and public-private partnerships can work together to promote these innovations.
Yeah, and let me refer to an example which comes from the IP Business Academy. This is a case study about Signify. And what Signify did is, so this is the former Philips lighting part. And maybe the audience knows that in former times, companies created light bulbs and sold light bulbs, and that was a very linear business model. Yeah, so producing and selling light bulbs, and then after 18 months, the light bulbs break, and then you have to buy the next one. And so with this switch to LEDs, the company Signify changed completely their business model, and now they are not any more longer selling light bulbs. Simply, light bulbs are gone, and these LEDs have a very long lifetime. And for most users, they don't buy this LED again. So the business is gone. And what they are doing is they sell the usage of light. So use cases of light, and the ownership of the LEDs stays with Signify. And that changed also the IP strategy completely, because now Signify has a strong incentivation to recycle, to construct, to design the LEDs in a way that you can separate the different materials and you can recycle them, because Signify is still the owner of the LED, and they have access to these LEDs, and they know exactly where these LEDs are used. And so they can bring them home, recycle them, and use the materials again. So these pay-per-use business model changed the whole question of circularity here for these very rare materials in these white light LEDs. And we have this case documented, and also the IP strategy behind that. And that is a good example how IP can have a very significant change in the value simply because you changed the business model, because the recycling of these LEDs had made no sense, because the companies which produce the LEDs don't know where the LEDs are. And so the channel back to Philips Signify to get access to the broken LEDs was simply not there. And so this is a wonderful example how, for example, here the design, the recyclability design of LEDs and the patents for that have a huge a cost effect now for the business model from Signify. And another thing which I would like to share with the audience is a wonderful initiative from Professor Tietze, and this is the intellectual property models for acceleration sustainability transition. And here I will share that with you in the comments of our talk. Here Frank developed lots of examples, teaching materials about the usage of IP into the direction towards to SDG and ESG. So what Christian asked in meantime is to you, would you, Henry, agree that there are still work needed to measure innovation and IP in a systematic way, for example, to their contribution to SDG and ESG?
Yes, this is a very important point, and I would agree there are still work needed to measure innovation in a systematic way on how they can also contribute to the various SDG goals and ESG areas. And this is really an important area for development and for international cooperation in this area.
And Yolande had a very, very good point here. She says that from a very practical standpoint, I mean, we can talk about national innovation systems. We can talk about the role of policy makers. We can talk about the roles of patent officers. But what she says is, what is with the SMEs? Because they often have even an issue with IP, and when it comes on top, SDG and ESG, and when this is just seen as a burden, I think then they have a certain issue. So the question is, how can we help them to understand IP as a business asset on the one side, and on the other side, ESG and SDG as a business opportunity and not as an additional burden?
Yeah. No, this is a very important question, and I also advise SMEs and CEOs. Let me actually, I think it is very important for them. Let me answer that question in two ways. One is the macro, from the macro aspects, the driving aspects, and secondly is really how they can use IP intelligently to develop their business. From a macro standpoint, as we have discussed, now for the leading companies in Europe and around the world, the CEOs and the boards are now very focused in transforming their company into sustainable development companies. And many of them have signed up to the Paris Agreement with carbon neutrality targets, and they are now busy developing the sustainable transformation plans, and they are busy developing their net zero plans. As part of this, they have been as part of this ESG and the work they're doing on ESG reporting, Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 type emissions, they are required also. In many of these leading companies are now requiring their suppliers to also be sustainable development companies, to be able to provide sustainable materials and things like that. For example, Patagonia requires all of its suppliers to be able to promise and to show and demonstrate that they can provide sustainable material before they can be the supplier, be it be a very big company or be an SME that supply maybe, say, buttons for Patagonia, T-shirts and things like that. So macroly, I think my advice to SMEs, the owners, the companies, yes, this is, it could cost you some additional effort and cost in the short term, but in the longer term, the macro driving force and the areas, in the business world around the world, if you want to stay as a credited supplier to leading companies around the world, there is no alternative. You have to develop yourself into a sustainable company with socially responsible practices.
Exactly. And that is the linkage when it comes top down, but at the end, it is the question, do you want to stay in that game? And then you have to change your activities there. So thank you very much, Henry, for these 45 minutes. It flew over. So I have many more questions. So I'm very happy to invite you again to talk with you. So thank you for the audience. Henry, it would be great when you take the time to go to the LinkedIn chat, which we have. Many questions are open. I was not able to pick all them up. Thank you very much to the audience, and see you next week for our next IP Business talk. Bye-bye. Have a good time and enjoy.
Thank you very much. I really enjoy it. And thank you, Alex.